Hey everybody, this is 179 from T.F.P. Cichlids, and today you're watching video number 10, an introduction to pedigrees and breeding programs. And so today specifically we're going to be talking about line breeding. Now, I just want to say that if you didn't watch my last video, episode number 9 on inbreeding, you should stop this video right now and go back and watch that video, because I'm going to be referring a lot to that video, and it would be better for you to watch that so that when you watch this one, you'd be able to understand what I'm talking about. So let's get to it. Now, before we talk about line breeding, I want to go back and talk about inbreeding. Inbreeding is when you breed close relatives, very close relatives. So close like father to daughter, mother to son, brother to sister. And so those are close breedings. And I spoke a lot about that, and I really emphasized the glory and the greatness of inbreeding. But what I wanted to mention was that inbreeding isn't always the best thing to do. See, you don't want to just inbreed any fish. Inbreeding is great, and it can be used really to effectively get the results that you've been trying to produce. But you do not want to just inbreed for the sake of inbreeding. You don't want to take your average fish and breed it to another, one of its sons or daughters, etc., etc. You don't want to do that with average fish. You want to do that with the fish that are exceptional, the fish that are amazing, the fish that, like in my case, it took me 6 years to breed T.F.P's Mega Man. He was the great-grandson of a breeding program that I had started. So basically, that went back 1, 2, 3 generations back. And so he was a special individual, and so he was a fish that I would have inbred. And I actually have been trying to inbreed and line breed his offspring, his grand offspring, in order to get that electric blue motoguensis look. So like in episode number 9, when I spoke about T.F.P's Mega Man, how I would have inbred the heck out of him. Matter of fact, I would have done a triple inbreeding to get like a 93% Mega Man offspring. That's fine and dandy. I would have gotten fish that looked like T.F.P's Mega Man. But, and this is the dangerous part of inbreeding, which I didn't speak about in the last video. Because remember, I'm trying to create an electric blue motoguensis. So I would be getting almost exact replicas of T.F.P's Mega Man. But you also have to remember that there are other genes that are going to be getting passed along. So T.F.P's Mega Man, let's say, for example, he had blindness, or let's say he had bloating. He had a bloating problem. Well, if I inbred him, and I produce exact copies of him, I would be producing offspring who would also be highly susceptible to being bloated or getting that disease. And that's what you see in flower horns. That's why a lot of flower horns are very weak. That's why they die easily, they get sick easily, was because they've been inbred so much that that they passed on those negative traits. They passed the positive, which was the red and the humps, but at the same time, they also passed the negative, which is that bloating and that susceptibility to disease. And so that's the dangers of inbreeding. So let's say that I took T.F.P's Mega Man, I produced my 93% Mega Man batch of fry. Now, a lot of them are going to be susceptible to that disease that he carries. Yes, they're all going to look like electric blue motoguensis, just like him. But they're also going to have negative traits, that negative bloating trait. And so there's something in the breeding world called breeding yourself into a corner. And that is basically when you only inbred, and in that process, all of those offspring have that disease, that bloating disease, or almost all of them have it. And so now you have a big problem. You spent all of this time, this money, this effort, years of breeding and inbreeding. You got your final result, which was the fish that you loved, that color, or that I finally got that fish that I loved. I got the electric blue motoguensis, but I have now almost 100% of my fish have that bloating problem, and that's breeding yourself in the corner. So you don't want to breed yourself in the corner. And so now, with that said, let's move on to the topic of this video. Line breeding. So what exactly is line breeding? Line breeding is when you breed an uncle to a niece, an aunt to a nephew, a grandfather to a granddaughter, a grandmother to a grandson, or a cousin to cousin. And so that is line breeding. And that could be even extended to breeding second, third, fourth cousins, cousin to cousin breeding. All of that is line breeding. What you're doing is you're still breeding within the same family, but not as close as in the inbreeding. And so all the dangers I just told you about inbreeding, you can avoid that by line breeding. Ideally, you would want to line breed. You only inbreed when you have your superstar male, your superstar female. That's the only time you want to be inbreeding. Other than that, you want to be line breeding. And so that's what we're going to talk about here today. So I'm going to go over some examples of some fish that I'd like to line breed. And actually in the last video, in episode number 9, at the end of my video, I spoke of different fish that I thought would have been great to inbreed. And amongst that list, I listed T.F.P's Dinamita, T.F.P's Tiger Mom, and T.F.P's Hot Tamale. And I mentioned them, but I did that mistakenly. In their case, I wouldn't want to inbreed, and I'm going to tell you why. T.F.P's Tiger Mom, T.F.P's Dinamita, and T.F.P's Hot Tamale are sisters. Now, they come from a breeding of a red tiger motaguensis to a female feste. And so what I got is I got females that look like festes, but for the trained eye, you would see that they're not festes, specifically because those black bars they have on their side go up to about halfway of their body, and then down below, it kind of gets washed out a little bit. But on pure festes, the black bars will go straight down. And so what I produced was, in my opinion, I produced a lean-looking feste. What does that mean? You got a lot of festes that they look really nice, but their bodies are very, sometimes you got like sloppy-looking bodies. You might have a big head and a smaller tail, or just, it's not really nice and tight-looking uniform. And so with breeding that motaguensis to that feste, you have a feste but with a tighter looking, leaner looking body. And so with that said, we have those 3 females, T.F.P's Dinamita, T.F.P's Tiger Mom, and T.F.P's Hot Tamale. Now since they all look almost alike, that's the trait that I want to continue in the breeding. And so I don't need to inbreed them. Since I have 3 separate females from the same breeding, I don't have to go crazy and try to do all this crazy inbreeding stuff. I don't have to do that. No, I have 3 separate females. So now what I need to do is I need to go ahead and line breed them. And so let me set this up now. How are we going to line breed them? So far I bred T.F.P's Iguana to T.F.P's Tiger Mom. Next, I'm going to breed T.F.P's Iguana to T.F.P's Hot Tamale. And third, I'm going to breed T.F.P's Iguana to T.F.P's Dinamita. And so now I have 3 very similar breedings, but not exactly the same. So now I could just go ahead and breed a T.F.P's Iguana bred to T.F.P's Tiger Mom male to a T.F.P's Iguana, T.F.P's Hot Tamale female. And I can go ahead and get some offspring off of that. But that's still kind of inbreeding. As a matter of fact, it is inbreeding because T.F.P's Iguana would have been the father of both of those offspring, and so that would have been a brother-sister breeding. So we're trying to avoid inbreeding. We don't want to just inbreed just because. We only want to inbreed when we produce that amazing star of a fish. So we're not going to inbreed. So our goal is not to do that breeding. And so now, how are we going to do a line breeding of this fish? And this is what we're going to do. T.F.P's Iguana has a nephew on my fish farm. His name is T.F.P's Punisher. That's right. T.F.P's Punisher's mother, T.F.P's Gasolina, she is actually T.F.P's Iguana's sister. And so T.F.P's Punisher is T.F.P's Iguana's nephew. So those are very similar breedings, the T.F.P's Iguana, the T.F.P's Punisher. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get T.F.P's Iguana and I'm going to breed him to T.F.P's Dinamita, T.F.P's Hot Tamale, and T.F.P's Tiger Mom. And so now I have separate batches of fry that I can use in my line breeding. And so this is what it's going to look like. I bred T.F.P's Iguana to T.F.P's Tiger Mom, and I produced an awesome looking male. right? I'm going to get that awesome looking male. Let's have that awesome looking male. He's on the top side. And I'm going to breed him to a daughter off of T.F.P's Punisher, bred to T.F.P's Dinamita. And so now I have two cousins. These two breedings produce cousins. And so now with that breeding, I can breed those together to produce some batch of fry, right? And they'll be cousins. Then I'm gonna get that male that I got from the T.F.P's iguana, T.F.P's tiger mom breeding, and I'm gonna breed that male to another female that is off of the T.F.P's Punisher, T.F.P's hot tamale breeding. And so now I have another separate batch of fry that are actually cousins. Very similar in breeding, but they're cousins. And so now what I'm doing is I'm still keeping the same genes, that Feste, Motaguensis, Managuensis gene together, but it's not from the exact same fish. What do I mean by that? It's not from T.F.P's iguana, bred to T.F.P's tiger mom, a male off of that, and then T.F.P's iguana, bred to T.F.P's hot tamale, a female off of that. Because breeding those two, as I mentioned, would be an inbreeding. Although on the mother's side, it would be a line breeding because those would be cousins on the mother's side. On their father's side, they're still half brothers. And so that would be an inbreeding. So in order to avoid that inbreeding, I'm going to utilize that other option of breeding that I told you. And so that's pretty much it. That's a line breeding. The purpose of line breeding is to preserve the genes of a breeding program while avoiding inbreeding, which a lot of inbreeding can carry genetic defects with it. And so that's pretty much it. So next week we're going to be talking about outcrossing. Outcrossing is very necessary when it comes to breeding, especially when you're inbreeding and you're line breeding. So make sure that you don't miss that video. I appreciate you guys watching my video and giving me feedback on my last video, number 9. And I just really hope that you guys can glean and get a lot of information here so that you could do your own breeding programs. So thank you for stopping by here at T.F.P. Cichlids, and I'll see you next week when we talk about outcrosses. Oh, and that's right. You know what? Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, go ahead and do that. And also press the notification bell so that you'll actually get the notification when I put the video out. Also, make sure that you share this video with your friends. I know y'all got a lot of friends out there that do hybrids, so make sure you share this video with them, even to the people in the flower horn community. Even if you have a lot of purist friends that don't really get with the hybrids, explain to them that there's this guy who's not fooling with the flower horns, because a lot of those puritist people really despise flower horns, and so they might appreciate what I'm doing a little more because I'm starting from scratch and actually using a lot of the species that they love. And so make sure you share those videos, share them on other platforms, on Instagram, Facebook. If you know any other platforms where people might see these videos, share it across there. Help me to really blow this thing up, because what I'm trying to do is create a hybrid revolution where we all start producing amazing fish, and so now we'll be able to have things that we can buy from each other and trade, etc., so that we can produce our own bloodlines. And really, I'm trying to take this to the to big time status. I envision, a stadium full of fish tanks, basically down on the ground floors, and having big competitions and that kind of thing. So let's work together to get this thing going, and let's create this hybrid revolution. So yeah, share that video with all your friends. Also, make sure that you join me on Facebook. Now, if you haven't friended me on Facebook, go ahead and go over to Facebook. I have a link down below in the description. Make sure you go over there and send me a friend request, and we can chit chat. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, you can share them with me, and we can just chit chat, talk a little bit. And so that's it. You just finished watching T.F.P. Cichlids episode number 10, an introduction to pedigrees and breeding programs. Part 3, specifically line breeding. So I thank you for stopping by. See y'all next week here on YouTube. Peace.